I see a lot of hype online about making insane amounts of money in tech sales, and yes, after spending 10 years myself at Oracle, Google Cloud, and a late-stage startup in the tech sales arena, I can say that I've seen people make insane amounts of money. But I also know what most people actually make. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through, realistically, what you can expect to make at different stages of your tech sales journey, how long it's going to take to get to each stage, and what it actually takes to accomplish those numbers. First off, we'll start with the SDR, Sales Development Representative, which is the entry-level appointment setter role where you're setting meetings and generate pipeline for account executives who close deals. For most people breaking into tech sales for the first time, regardless of if you have closing experience in other industries or a fancy degree, the SDR role is going to be your golden ticket to lowering the barrier of entry into the best tech companies in the world. According to repview.com, which is a great trusted source for sales compensation data, particularly in tech sales, where you can also learn about top companies, their culture, how many reps are hitting quota. It basically is going to help you make sound decisions on the best companies to bet your career on. RepView says that the typical median base salary and on-target earnings for SDRs are around $60,000 base and $85,000 on-target earnings. Now, top performers make just over $128,000 a year on target earnings, and about 56.6% of SDRs in the industry actually attain their on-target earnings and hit their quota. Now, I personally know SDRs at companies like AWS making over $150K in on-target earnings when you factor in their signing bonus and the equity or reserve stock units that Amazon gives them. And I've even come across SDRs at startups making over $200,000 and SDRs at Shopify making over $200K because the system was designed in a way where the SDR compensation structure was uncapped and it was really favorable. Now, be warned, just because you can make $200K at a company like Shopify doesn't mean that when you get to account executive, you're going to make as much money. I actually know someone from my network at Shopify who hit $200K plus as an SDR, and now as an account executive, he's actually going to make much less money working twice as hard. And now he's thinking about leaving the company. So just because you can make a lot as an SDR doesn't mean that the account executives of the company you're applying to are hitting their quotas, and it might actually be a really tough life as an AE. So when applying to companies, do your homework and be mindful to talk to different people at the organization, including account executives, to see what percentage of account executives are hitting their numbers and how much they're making, and make sure to take that into account before taking on an entry-level SDR role, because you need to play the tech sales career chess match and have multi-step thinking and not just play checkers when you're only thinking about the next move in front of you. Now, before we jump into the expected earnings of an SMB account executive role, let's talk about the difference between selling in big tech and at a startup from a compensation perspective. I'm going to keep it high level, but you can assume that these principles apply at different levels, whether you're an SDR, SMB AE, mid-market AE, or an enterprise account executive, which again we'll talk about right after this. If you're selling at a large enterprise company like Oracle, AWS, and companies that are becoming large enterprises like Database, maybe a late-stage mature startup that's about to IPO, you're going to find that you're plugging into a system where you are going to get a structure where you're trained and you have go-to-market enablement, and you're going to have a predictable path to promotion within a year, sometimes less, or if beyond a year, no more than 1.5 years from starting your SDR role. And you're going to find that these big tech companies offer higher, more predictable, more stable salaries and better benefits. But on the flip side, these big enterprise tech companies are really good at figuring out ways to cap your commission. You could blow it out 1 year, but then your quota increases and they figure out how to change their commission structure so that you make less money because they're trying to squeeze out as much savings as possible to improve their overall profit margins. Now, startups tend to offer lower base salaries, but they offer higher upside in the form of commissions and on-target earnings and equity or stock in the company. But you have to be careful with the promise of high OTEs, on-target earnings, and commission and a bunch of equity, because it might not be realistic that you're going to hit your quota based on how other reps are performing. And most startups fail and they don't go public, so the chances of IPOing and turning your equity from fairy dust into a ton of value isn't very high. If you're selling at a startup, you're going to have the opportunity to move up and get promoted more quickly. You're going to have the chance to make more money more quickly. And you're not going to have red tape that's going to slow you down. You're going to have more freedom and autonomy to wear different hats and feel like you're really contributing, because when you close a deal, it really moves the needle more for a startup than at a big enterprise tech company that's bringing in billions of dollars. But on the flip side, you're going to be living in the Wild West. You're not going to have much sense of direction, and it's going to be hard to succeed. You're going to have to figure things out. Ultimately, your decision between big tech and startup is going to come down to your risk tolerance. Are you willing to take a shot on yourself, or do you want more security, stability, and support in big tech? And one other consideration is, what is your future vision? Do you want to be a VP in big tech? If so, start in big tech. Do you want to be a founder of a startup? If so, maybe you take your shot at a startup out of the gate. According to the salary data on RepView, your median base salary in an SMB AE role is going to be about $70K, and your median on-target earnings is going to be about $130K, and top performers make about $266,000 or more, and just over 43% of reps in the industry hit their quota in this role. If you play your cards right as an SMB account executive, within a year you can get promoted to mid-market account executive. In this role, you're still going to cover a decent sized territory with a healthy number of accounts, but your accounts are going to be much larger, hundreds of millions in revenue to $1 billion plus in revenue, and the deal sizes are going to be larger. The deals are going to be more complex, and there's going to be more decision makers and stakeholders in your deals, and you're going to grow a lot. And in this role, you're going to make some really good money. I've seen mid-market account executives love living in that space because they find a balance of a lot of accounts to go after while also having larger deal sizes. According to the data on RepView, the median base salary of a mid-market account executive is going to be $90,000. The median on-target earnings is going to be about $170,000. And the top performers, they're going to make over $386,000 a year when they hit their number. After a year or more of success as a mid-market account executive, congratulations, you're going to get promoted to the coveted enterprise account executive role, where you're going to be covering a select group of strategic accounts that might have billions of revenue. You're going to cover the big brand names that we know and love, brands that have impacted you, whether it's an airline or a professional sports organization, brands that have personally impacted you, whether it's an airline like JetBlue or a company like Starbucks where I'm sipping my nitro cold brew every day. It's really cool to be supporting these large companies, and the deal sizes are going to be monstrous. They might be millions of dollars, they might be tens of millions of dollars. They can even get as large as hundreds of millions of dollars or more. And of course, these deal cycles are going to drag out. They're going to take some real patience, some real strategy, and you're going to have to work across multiple stakeholders to get the deal done. You're going to work with different executives, influencers, maybe even end users, and it's going to take probably up to a year or more to close these deals. I've personally had enterprise sales roles at companies like Oracle and Google Cloud, where I've covered companies like AAA, and I've had anywhere from 10 to 18 accounts. I've seen some enterprise account executives covering as little as 3 to 5 strategic accounts. Now, according to RepView's compensation data, the median base salary for an enterprise account executive is $135,000. The median on-target earnings is $260,000 or more if they achieve their quota, and top performers make as much as $621,000 or more. Just over 39% of enterprise account executives in the industry achieve their full quota. As an enterprise account executive selling in big tech, the financial upside is huge. It's nearly limitless. And I've personally known sellers at Google, AWS, Oracle, Salesforce, Dell, Databricks, and late-stage data and AI platforms that have made $500,000, $700,000, $800,000, even $1 million to $2 million a year. It's crazy. And I've even heard of a Salesforce account executive that closed the largest deal in history who made over $8 million in 1 year. These enterprise sellers are closing $50 million deals, $100 million deals, or larger, and they're not closing these deals alone. They're closing these strategic deals with the help of their company's top technical resources, top technical executives, and top business executives. And they didn't get into these roles that put themselves in the position to make $500,000 or more overnight. They hit their numbers consistently year over year, and they networked to get there over the course of 5 to 10 years or more. So how hard is it to make $300,000 in tech sales? It's really hard, and not a lot of people do it. You need to be in the right situation, at the right company, in the right role, with the right territory and the right timing, and you need to put in the work and effectively manage your time and have a little bit of luck on your side. There are many talented sellers at the wrong company, in the wrong territory, with the wrong timing that don't make any commissions and just make their base salary. If you're going to be the rep making $300,000 or more, you're going to be selling at the right company at a late stage startup that's done really well, that's probably getting ready to IPO like Databricks or Deal, or you're in big tech selling with a big brand name like an Oracle, an AWS, or a Dell, and you're certainly in a mid-market enterprise or enterprise role where you're selling to $100 million in revenue companies, $1 billion plus revenue companies, and you're selling large transformational strategic deals that take 6 to 12 months or more to close. One way you'll get to $300,000 in earnings is if you have an $150,000 base salary and $150,000 on-target variable, which is a typical compensation structure in tech sales. You have a 50-50 split between base salary and on-target variable. And if you hit your number at 100%, which might be a $1.5 million revenue quota, then you're going to make $300,000. But if you're in a mid-market account executive or enterprise account executive role where the on-target earnings isn't at $300,000, you're going to have to exceed your quota and tap into commission accelerators to get to that $300K in earnings. For example, imagine you have a $200K on-target earnings role with a 50-50 split with a $100,000 base salary and $100,000 on-target earnings variable commission. If you've got 1.5x commission accelerators once you hit your $1 million quota, that means 1.5 is applied to the base commission rate. You're going to make more commission on every deal, every dollar that's closed beyond your $1 million quota. So in this $200,000 OTE compensation structure at 1.5x commission accelerators, once you pass $1 million in closed revenue, you're going to need to close an extra $200,000 in revenue beyond your 1 million number. So a total of $1.2 million in closed revenue and 120% attainment to make $300,000 in total earnings. In order to hit and exceed your on-target earnings, you're going to need to dial in your mindset and your habits, and you need to ruthlessly focus on income-producing activities and ignore all the rest. So what are the income-producing activities that you need to be maniacally focused on day in and day out, Monday through Friday? It's prospecting to generate more meetings and pipeline. It's preparing for discovery calls, executing those discovery calls, preparing for and executing any other sales calls that you have as you progress prospects through the sales cycle, and strategically following up with prospects, strategizing on important deals and building key presentations and business justifications and ROI calculations that you're going to leverage to move the needle on those key deals and get them over the edge. And of course, following up with your prospects and your key deals, because any deal worth winning is going to require some persistence and thoughtful follow-up. It's the follow-ups that fuel our tech sales finances. And top sellers, they aren't just dialed into the right habits and focused on income-producing activities all day, every day of the week. They're also ruthless with what they say no to. They consistently say no to internal meetings and small deals that rob them of their time and have a huge opportunity cost that otherwise they could invest into the top deals that are actually going to change their quarter, their year, and their career and get them to the $300,000 plus earnings mark. Now, there are a couple other compensation variables that get mid-market and enterprise account executives at top companies to the $300,000 plus earnings mark, and those are signing bonuses and equity packages. I've personally seen sellers receive a signing bonus of $10,000. Back at Google Cloud, when I was an inside seller, I received a $20,000 signing bonus. And I've even seen sellers at AWS, back when they were throwing a ton of money around, being the #1 cloud provider from an infrastructure as a service perspective in the market. I've seen signing bonuses from them of $100,000 or more. From an equity package perspective, I've typically seen $40,000 to $100,000 in total equity offered to sellers, and that's broken out year over year over 4 years, and averages out to about $10,000 in equity per year to $25,000 in equity per year. But I've definitely seen sellers at big companies like AWS in mid-market account executive roles and enterprise account executive roles getting as much as $100,000 plus per year in equity. All compensation variables considered, if you play your tech sales cards right and end up at the right companies, you're going to get to $300,000 in on-target earnings or more within 3 to 5 plus years. In my personal tech sales career journey, which started out 10 years ago as an SDR at Oracle, in that first role out of college when I didn't know what I was doing, I was making a $45K base salary and made a total of $75,000 when I hit and exceeded my number. I was living in Boston at the time, and given the high cost of living, that wasn't a lot of money to work with, and I did have a couple other roommates who were also SDRs at Oracle, but fortunately I was able to work hard and make the right connections to get a promotion, not just to any account executive role, but one of the best account executive roles in one of Oracle's best business units, National Tech Named Accounts, where I was covering large accounts like AAA, and I hit my quota halfway through the year, taking 2-hour lunch breaks. In that first inside sales account executive role, I was making $150,000, and I had more money than I knew what to do with at 23 years old, only 2 years into the space, and I was buying my whole team coffees, eating out all the time, and it was a great life. The keys that got me promoted at that level from SDR to my first AE role, and then at any other level as I progressed in my career, was playing the numbers game at first, trusting that more quantity would lead to quality, and just simply having more at-bats and doing more cold calls and outbound touches would lead to more opportunity. And I also started to proactively think like an account executive and think like the next role, and develop the skills required for that next role, like discovery skills. And I did that by building great account executive relationships and turning them into mentors who wanted to coach me up and invest in me, and learning from them what their mindset was, how they approached discovery, and how they progressed and closed deals. The best sales artists steal and they don't reinvent the wheel, and that's exactly what I did. And the other key was that I turned my account executives into champions who vouched for me and put in a good word to my future boss when it came time for promotion, and I even proactively networked with that future account executive boss to hear what they looked for and how I could shape myself into the best candidate possible when it came time for promotion. And especially at a big company like Oracle, by networking internally, I spoke to different sellers across different business units, and I figured out the best business units and the best territories with the best accounts where the best timing would put me in a position to crush my number and not have to work harder than I needed to. After making $150K in that first inside account executive role, eventually I pivoted my way to Google Cloud, still in an inside sales role, and I got up to a $200,000 plus on-target earnings opportunity. And of course, I increased my base salary substantially by making that external pivot, because that's what happens when you make a career change to a different company. Your base is going to jump up as well as your on-target earnings. And then I got promoted to field sales at 26, one of the youngest at Google Cloud, and that's where I was covering about 18 accounts, and my on-target earnings jumped to the $300,000 plus mark. Other factors that went into my compensation at Google Cloud was reserved stock units, or equity, which adds up and makes that total number quite attractive. Other compensation variables at Google Cloud were the reserve stock units that I had, and I also had great benefits, man. Like, they spent a lot of money on providing free lunches and amazing healthcare care where I basically paid $0 for any prescription I needed. Then I took a leap to a founding account executive role at a startup where I got a further base bump and bump in on-target earnings, and I got a huge amount of pre-IPO equity. I had a lot of leverage coming from Google when it came to negotiating for my overall compensation package, and the hope was that my 50,000 shares of stock would eventually go from fairy dust to multiplying in value once we went public. Now the reality is, eventually I left that sales role to go all in on building Tech Sales Accelerator to help people like you, if you're still watching this video, launch your tech sales career and make deep six figures and eventually launch into entrepreneurship like I did. Looking back on my 10-year tech sales career, there's not much that I would change, and I'd encourage you to consider following a similar path. Starting in big tech at a company like Oracle or Dell, where you can get elite training, you develop those skills which make you very valuable as a seller for any company that wants to poach you, like Google Cloud ultimately poached me. You build a great network, you have the marketability of a great brand name, and you grow a ton. And then going to Google Cloud, which was a bit more entrepreneurial and a bit more of a startup-like sales motion within the context of a big enterprise company that had a huge financial backing, where I made many more connections and met incredible people, and I grew a ton. And then leaping to a startup that was more of the Wild West in a founding account executive role, that was a great next step for me at the time, where I increased my overall compensation and I learned a lot more from a skills perspective that ultimately trained me up to launch into entrepreneurship and build this business, Tech Sales Accelerator, which is helping 100,000 people create personal transformation and a life they love through success in tech sales and the pursuit of self-development. If you're still with me and you're hungry, you're a dreamer who wants to break into tech sales and move up quickly, or maybe you're an SDR or account executive who wants to join the $300,000 plus earners club and up level, if you want to pivot to a better company, whatever you want to do when it comes to maximizing your trajectory on this path, that's why I made Tech Sales Accelerator, to help people like you win at every stage of the tech sales game. I've helped people break into companies like Snowflake and become the #1 of 130 SDRs, and then make pivots to external companies like Confluent and get $195,000 in on-target earnings in 1.5 years after transitioning from being a loan officer. I've helped people get into companies like Databricks and trained SDRs and AEs at Databricks. I've worked with people at companies like Oracle, Google Cloud, Dell, Salesforce, HubSpot, you name it. Whether you're trying to break into a top company or up level at a top company, I've got your back. I can only take on a limited amount of people. I've limited capacity, but if you do decide you want to partner with me on your journey, you're going to get a personalized experience, a ton of value, and I'm going to give you everything I got. If you want me to help you move the needle on your tech sales goals, book a call with me at my Calendly link linked in the description of this video. We'll talk about your goals and map out a strategy to hit them as soon as possible. I'll see you over there.